think in your life, is there anything better than being chosen, being picked? Sandy, somebody wants you to do something. Somebody wants to be with you. Somebody wants to do this activity with you. Like, that is the definition of what fun is in my mind, right? Being chosen. And where's that come from? Well, we're made in God's image. I think that is just a state of things. I don't necessarily know if that's a human condition, as opposed to God feels that way too. He loves to be chosen. And I don't think in like a weird diabolical way. He's like, hey, I'm going to create this thing and we can have a great relationship with each other. No, yeah. I just don't want people to hear something I'm not saying, right? Of God wanted to establish a beautiful relationship, and he gave himself and the tools, and he was willing to risk it all to have that relationship, which is what's crazy. And that's how powerful and special it is.
There's this huge setup to create the universe in order to support humankind. And then he chooses to make us in his image with all these beautiful characteristics, all the good things that we have to offer him and each other. And he's looking forward to this wonderful, abundant relationship with people. But he gives them this choice. Otherwise, to your point, it's kind of like robotic, right? If humans were created and they had to follow God and they had to choose him, and there wasn't a choice, you're right, it wouldn't feel very relational, would it? It would feel mandated, imposed upon, an edict. And I just don't see how any of those words would, manifest itself in a loving relationship. We have to choose to worship God, and we have to choose to want to be with God. And it feels like Adam and Eve did that in the beginning, right? They're living there and they're naked in the garden and they're doing their job. They're working in the garden and enjoying the fruit of their labor. But then here comes the serpent. And, the truth is we really don't know why God allowed the serpent to be in the garden. The text doesn't tell us. There's nothing specific that says, and then God created a serpent to test their will or to test their resolve. It just says, now the serpent was more crafty than any other animal in the garden.
It has to be some sort of just, when you build the system the way he built it for free will, for choice, there's other things that have to exist inside that for it to happen.
Yeah. Like in order to have free will, you have to have the ability to make a choice, right? And we're not talking about a choice about which part of the garden to work in.
Right.
Or how to spend your day. We're talking about this choice about the belief of God. And as we've often been talking about, what we think about when we talk about God is the most important thing about us. That's according to A.W. Tozer. So it's exactly it's exactly the same for Adam and Eve, right? What did they think about God?
Yeah, and obviously they seem, the story, I get a sense that they were somewhat naive of the gravity of who and what God was because of how simple-minded they are about it. Like, oh, we're going to eat this, and then all of a sudden they kind of hide from God in the garden. Like, you can't hide from God. Like, what are you doing? Like, that's not going to work.
Well, they must have felt immediately ashamed or knew they were guilty. Right? Like, but the actual enticement is interesting to me, as we have talked about. This one specific tree that would give them certain knowledge that Adam and Eve were probably super intrigued about, probably had walked by that tree many times and thought about that idea and the restriction. Why did God restrict us from that tree? And maybe they would have never acted on it, but then here comes the serpent.